If Dr. Joe's meditations aren't working for you, bear with me because I'm going to explain why this might be. There are a number of reasons, but I'm going to address one in this video and several others in upcoming videos. So the first one I want to address is his tone of voice. And before I launch in, I want to make sure that this is not misunderstood. This is not a criticism to Dr. Joe personally, and it is certainly not a criticism of his work, although it is a critical analysis of certain elements that I believe could be improved in order to actually heighten their effect for many people who might not be responding to them. So if you find that your body tightens up when you listen to Dr. Joe's meditations and you're not getting the results or having the mystical experience that he speaks about, this is probably why. And the reason is that it has to do with your nervous system and Dr. Joe's tone of voice. Now, every single voice has a unique quality to it. That quality is often referred to as a color, and in professional circles in music, it's referred to as timbre, which is the unique quality of a voice. Now, before we get into this more deeply, you need to know that timbre can be changed. And anybody who's trained their voice, they will know that timbre is, changes when you train your voice. And when we study voice professionally, we are simultaneously learning and training our ears how to hear. And so anybody who studied music will have a completely refined hearing ability that most people on the street won't have. And it comes through the years of training. So you learn how to discern nuance in musical tone, but it's not simply about whether you're hitting the right, sound, the right pitch or not. This kind of hearing is much more differentiated and brings with it a capacity to hear different qualities in instruments and in the human voice. And obviously, somebody who's trained in classical singing will have an infinitely greater capacity to hear vocal issues in somebody's voice, whether it's just their speaking voice or singing voice. So this is where I'm coming from. So from my professional background in singing. So Dr. Joe does this thing with his voice in meditations, many of you will know. And he does two things, actually, that I'm going to speak about here. The first one is that he elongates vowels. Now, this is intuitively, obviously, a really clever thing to do, because by elongating vowels, we bring a musical quality into language. And it starts to be in that space between spoken language and a sort of rhythmic incantation or chanting. Now, many religions or spiritual traditions have used exactly this to induce trance. So the fact that Dr. Joe starts elongating his vowels is meant to be an aid, an assistance, something that helps you get into deeper states of consciousness and access your subconscious mind. But he does certain things in a way that might not be conducive to everybody. And one of them is when he elongates the vowels, he distorts the natural poetic meter of the language. Now, what that means is that he does not keep the same stress that we use in language to convey meaning. So I'll give an example of what this means. Let's say think of the word banana. Banana. So I do not say banana. I say banana. So here, the emphasis is on the second syllable. And that is characteristic for the word banana, whether I say it fast or slowly. The actual emphasis does not change. Now, people who do not have a background in music sometimes, or most often actually, find it difficult to change the pace without distorting the natural emphasis of language. And if we think of music, for example, in Mozart, Mozart's music is famous, in particular, his operas are famous for the perfect unity between the music, the rhythms and in the music and language. So what that means is there's a perfect synthesis between, for example, the emphasis of a word and the musical connotation. Okay, so if I use the word banana here, I can say banana. Okay, I haven't changed the word, but I've made it into music. Okay, so Dr. Joe can't do this. He starts when he elongates the vowels, he starts bringing a sort of symmetry into the rhythm that starts to sound contrived and mechanical. So it's a bit like a machine. Okay, that's one thing that he does. So if you must think, our nervous systems are incredibly highly strung and intelligent entities in a way. And our nervous system will reject something that sounds artificial or not natural. And that is beyond our conscious cognition, because the nervous system is connected to your subconscious mind or your unconscious mind. So you might not even realize why something triggers you, but you feel an instinctual annoyance or rejection or dislike. And in this case, it could be this mechanical division of the words. Okay, that's one reason. But there's another one. And I think the second one's probably more profound. The other reason and the other thing that he does when he puts on this voice is that he is primarily projecting his voice from his third energy center. So for those of you who don't know the energy centers in the body, we have 7 energy centers that correlate to the chakras from Eastern traditions. There's the one at the root, which is at the base of the spine, in the area of the perineum. The second one that's related to our sacrum and the sexual areas. Then we come up to the third one that is actually pretty much positioned physically where your solar plexus is. So where your diaphragm is under the lungs. So these energy centers are, or let me say, these energy centers have corresponding organs that belong to them. And if we want to sing well or project our voice very far and with a lot of volume, we need to have these energy centers open. And that means that these centers in our body, for most of us, one or 2 or 3 of these centers will have some form of habitual constriction. that prevents the breath being completely full and open through all of these 7 centers. Now, when you are using your voice, and in particular, if you are raising the volume of your voice, what happens is that you meet your boundaries. And the boundaries are the places where you physically, there's some restriction or tightness in the muscles that will inhibit the flow of the voice. It doesn't have to be in the muscles. It can also be in the fascia. And there can be many reasons for this. And people who are very talented, have a big natural voice, usually have very few restrictions and have a very open and full breath that mostly translates to a wide range of voice and a very full-bodied and resonant voice. But Dr. Joe is more similar to most people. And what we can hear, and we can also see it if we look carefully at what he's doing when he's using this particular voice that he uses in his meditations, is that he often increases the volume. However, for the intensity that he produces, i.e. the volume, he doesn't have enough chest resonance. And so what happens is his voice gets stuck in his 3rd energy center in the diaphragm, which happens to be the area that is associated with your personality and personal human will. Okay, it's also associated with dominance and being able to, exert your will. So what happens for people who have a more trained ear, or potentially some of you who might actually just be very sensitive and have a sensitive nervous system, is that the vocal tone that transmits from him, that gets stuck in that 3rd energy center in his diaphragm, can register as domineering or sort of power over, because there is a lot of power to it. There's a lot, but at the same time, there's a lot of force. And what is lacking is the heart resonance that gives it a wider breadth and a fuller sound that can encompass that level of volume. But he doesn't have that, so it gets stuck. So this can translate to many people as a domineering voice, as a voice that is telling you what to do and is overpowering. And I would just like to say that you might not even register this consciously, but it's possible that if you come from a background where, for example, you've had a parental figure that is masculine, male, and that has, raised his voice at you and shouted at you, that you will be triggered by Dr. Joe's voice, because when he raises his volume over a certain threshold, it starts to go in the direction of shouting. It's not shouting, but it's going into that direction, okay? Because he doesn't have the physical vocal capacity to be able to allow that volume to resonate from the heart center. Now, I'm not saying he cannot bring his voice into the heart center, because in certain places in the meditations, or in certain meditations, he does. And this is where, we've got to be very differentiated here. So, for example, if any of you have recently been to one of his workshops, and you will recall the meditation Molecules of the Mystical. Now, this is a beautiful example because when he is enunciating and, saying these molecules of the mystical, like dimethyltryptamine, when he does that, he takes his volume back and he is actually using his heart center, heart chakra to resonate. And so at a certain pitch, he can do it. It's just at the beginnings of the meditation or when he's trying to infuse dynamism is when he is coming very strongly from the third center, which is audible in his voice, and it will also be visible in his body. And that perhaps is topic for another video, what one would see in the body. But I'm just wanting to say this for those of you who find you get triggered, that it's not helping your nervous system, his meditations, and you're not making headway, and there's something in you that is recoiling. It could be his tone of voice, because do not underestimate the power of somebody's tone of voice. It says everything. It talks about, or let me say, it conveys, what energy you're coming from. So in this case, Dr. Joe is coming from wanting, to instill a new belief, wanting to, be dynamic. But if you, for example, suffer from trauma and you have a nervous system that has certain trauma wiring, that'll just register as danger. It'll register as a cue for danger. And that's just the way it is. Okay. And this obviously ties into neurosensory voice work and how cues of safety and danger are registered beyond our conscious awareness, but they are registered in our body. So just again, if you're one of these people who's come out feeling more wired after those meditations, this might be the reason. So that's all for today, and I'll be diving a little more deeper into some other reasons why his meditations might not be benefiting you as well. So stay tuned if you're interested. Bye for now. Hope you enjoyed the content, and do ask any questions. I'm always happy to answer. So if this doesn't make sense to you, if if you can't relate to what I'm saying, or if you can, just leave a comment, share your thoughts. Happy to hear from you. Bye for now.